My wife's family needed help with school fees, hospital bills, even business capital. I said yes every single time. Until the day I said no and they made it feel like I never said yes at all. From the moment my plane touched down at Heathrow, I stopped being a person and became something else, a solution, a lifeline, a walking answer to everyone's silent prayers back home. No one asked if I was eating, if I had friends, if I was sleeping on a mattress or a borrowed floor. All they saw was abroad. And to them, abroad meant money. That was the beginning of the quiet unraveling, the part no one tells you about when they say, just go and hustle, your people will support you. But they don't tell you that sometimes, your people will be the ones to drain you dry. This story isn't about revenge. It's not even about anger. It's about the slow, painful process of learning that not every person you call family wants to see you well, some just want to see you useful. Until you aren't. And when that day comes, the silence is louder than anything you've ever heard. They always say the first breath you take when the plane lands in London feels like freedom. For me, it felt like obligation. I remember gripping the armrest as the wheels touched down. My palms were sweating. Not from fear of flying, no. I'd flown before. It was the weight of what I was carrying that scared me. 12 hours earlier, I'd been at Enugu airport with 27 prayers stitched into my shirt pocket. My wife tucked them in just before I left. Mama said I should sew my destiny into the hem of my jacket. My brother-in-law even whispered that if I made it, I should remember those who cleared the way. Whatever that meant. They saw my flight as the family's harvest. I saw it as my last chance. Back then, I believed going abroad was the most loving thing I could do. I wasn't running away, I was stepping up. For my children, for Ngozi, for all of them. That was the story I told myself, and everyone else. The truth, I was tired of being a man who couldn't provide. I wanted to walk into a bank and not feel like a joke. I wanted to buy my daughter new shoes without borrowing from my neighbor. I wanted my son to say, my daddy is in the UK, and not feel embarrassed. I just wanted to matter. In the early months, that pride carried me. Even when I slept on a mattress someone left beside a dustbin. Even when my first job involved scrubbing a restaurant kitchen from midnight to 6 a.m. for £5 an hour under the table. I told myself it was temporary. Every time I wired money back home, even if it was just 50,000, I imagined the smiles. I imagined the prayers that followed. The God bless you texts, the quiet approval in Mama's voice. And when they called me our Ginbo man at the village meeting, I swallowed it like praise. Nobody knew that I didn't own a winter coat, that I layered 3 shirts and a hoodie because I couldn't afford one. That some nights I'd come home so tired I'd fall asleep sitting on the floor, halfway through microwaving rice. But that was the agreement, wasn't it? You leave Nigeria, you don't complain. You succeed visibly loudly, or you're not just a disappointment, you're a disgrace. So I played the part. I sent money for school fees, even when I had to delay paying my rent. I sent money for Mama's blood pressure drugs, even though I hadn't seen a doctor in 2 years. I sent money to fix the leaking roof back home, while the rain was dripping into my own flat in Birmingham. But nobody asked. Nobody ever asked, not how are you coping, not are you eating, not even are you okay? They just asked, Chuka Biko, can you send small something this week? And I always did. Because how do you say no when everyone thinks you've made it? How do you explain that abroad doesn't mean abundance? I told myself it was love, that this was what men do, that I was the tree and they were the branches. But slowly I started to wonder, what happens when the tree runs dry? What happens when giving becomes surviving? What happens when they stop seeing you as a person and only as a provider? I didn't know it yet, but something inside me had already started to crack, and it was only a matter of time before it broke. It started like every other request. A voice note from Ngozi, her tone soft, almost apologetic. She said Mama's leg was swelling again, and the doctor said it might be kidney something. The hospital needed a deposit. School fees were also due for both the children, 420,000 combined. If I could just send 850,000 total, it would cover everything. She even broke it down for me as if that would make it easier to hear. I sat on the bus listening to that message over and over. 5:52 a.m. My eyes were barely open. I'd worked the night shift cleaning office floors that reeked of bleach and old coffee. My back ached. My palms were raw. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since the evening before. But that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was that I didn't even flinch. I didn't curse. I didn't cry. I didn't even wonder where the money would come from. I just opened my banking app and started calculating. How much did I have? £213 and 45 pence. How much could I borrow from Jide without raising suspicion? Maybe £100. If I skipped my rent and paid the late fee instead, could I stretch it? Possibly. I moved money like a gambler placing bets he knows he can't win. That same evening I sent £1,200. No questions asked, no complaints. And the next day, silence. No thank you, no I hope you're okay. Just another message forwarded from Ngozi showing me a bill for blood tests. 78,000 more. I stared at my phone for 10 full minutes, not blinking, not breathing. Just staring. I was used to the requests, but this time something felt different, not because of the money, not even because of the silence, but because I started to feel invisible, like a ghost they summoned when they needed something. A voice on the other end of the transfer alert, nothing more. I hadn't bought a new pair of shoes in 2 years, I hadn't eaten meat in weeks, I hadn't felt joy in months, but they were planning a family get-together in December. I saw it in a WhatsApp group, pictures of outfits, menu ideas, someone even suggested hiring a live band. I sat in my tiny flat, jacket zipped up indoors because I couldn't afford to turn on the heater, and I watched them talk about party jollof. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't anger, it was something worse, it was emptiness. It was the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, they weren't asking because they were desperate. They were asking because they knew I'd say yes, because I always had. Because I was dependable, predictable, sacrificial. Because I was abroad, and abroad is where money grows on trees, right? I thought about not replying. I thought about calling Ngozi and saying, I can't, not this time. But I didn't. I just switched off my phone, sat on the floor, and let the silence cover me like a blanket. It was the first time I considered what it might feel like to stop answering, to stop pretending, to stop saving everyone except myself. But I wasn't ready yet, not then, not just yet. I started working Sundays. It wasn't part of the plan. But the bills were stacking and the calls weren't stopping. One of Ngozi's cousins, someone I barely knew, messaged me directly asking for 200,000 to start a car parts business. I didn't respond. He followed up with, you've made it now, brother. One day ego be me too. I read the message 3 times before deleting it. There was a kind of entitlement that had grown over the years. Quiet at first. Then bold, now loud. It was like they didn't see me as a person anymore, just a wallet with a UK number. I'd become two people. There was Chuka, the man they saw back home. Provider, saver, rescuer. The one who could be counted on no matter what. The one who made it. And then there was me, cold, tired, vanishing. I worked in a care home twice a week, pushing wheelchairs and changing diapers for old men who barely remembered their own names. The rest of the week I cleaned at an events hall, mopping vomit and scrubbing toilets after weddings I would never be invited to. Still, I smiled during video calls. When Mama's face lit up on WhatsApp, I didn't let her see my cracked lips or the blister on my cheek from a burn at work. I just said, "I'm managing, Ma, God is faithful." When my son asked me, "Daddy, when are you coming home?" I told him soon. After I finished one more contract. But the truth was, I didn't even know how to afford the plane ticket anymore. Something shifted in me the day my daughter turned 10. I missed the video call. I had an extra shift and my manager said I could lose the job if I skipped again. I messaged Ngozi later that night to ask how the party went. She replied, "It was fine. We made do." She was a bit sad, Shaw. She said, "You forgot." I didn't reply. What could I say? That I cried in the staff locker room? That I sat in the toilet for 40 minutes during my break just to hide the way my hands were shaking? They think abroad hardens you. But what they don't tell you is that it breaks you in soft, quiet ways. It makes you apologize for things that are not your fault. It makes you feel guilty for resting. It makes you invisible in your own story. One night I was walking home after a late shift. It had just rained and the wind was cutting through my clothes like razors. I saw my reflection in a shop window, a thin, hunched man with tired eyes and no smile. I didn't recognize him. I remember whispering to myself, "Is this what I left for?" I tried to tell Ngozi once gently that I was struggling, that I needed to pause the money just for a month, just to breathe. Her voice turned cold almost immediately. "Chuka, people are relying on you. This is not the time to be weak." She didn't mean it to hurt, but it did. It felt like she'd reached through the phone and pulled out whatever strength I had left. I began to dread my phone. The ringtone gave me chest pain. Every vibration felt like a demand. Every missed call felt like failure. Even God started to feel far away. I stopped going to church. I couldn't sit there and sing songs about blessing and overflow when I couldn't even buy toothpaste without checking my account twice. I felt myself disappearing, and no one seemed to notice. It was a Saturday, cold gray, I hadn't slept. My manager had called off my shift last minute, and instead of feeling relief, I felt panic. That 72 pounds was already counted. It was already gone. The minute it wasn't coming, I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall. The heater had stopped working. I had one slice of bread left. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 2 days. That's when the call came. Ngozi. Video call, I almost didn't pick up, but guilt answered for me. Her face was calm, distant. The kids were in the background playing. She smiled briefly, then turned serious. "Babe, we need to talk." I already knew. She'd spoken to the contractor. They needed 1.2 million more for the family house to be completed before Christmas. Her younger brother had been sent home from school, unpaid fees. Also, Mama needed to refill her meds. I didn't say a word, she waited. Then in that same tone, casual, almost polite, she added, "You'll try to send it this week, right? I told them you'd sort it." That was when something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was quiet, like the last thread of a worn fabric giving way. I looked at her and all I could see was the expectation. Not love, not fear, not care, just expectation, like I was a tap that never ran dry. My voice surprised even me. "I can't," I said. "Silence. What do you mean?" I said, "I can't. Ngozi, I'm finished. I'm tired. I have nothing left, not even for myself." She blinked, confused, then her voice sharpened. "So you're saying you'll just abandon everything, after everything we've done for you, after all I've sacrificed?" That phrase hit like a slap. After all I've sacrificed. As if my struggle wasn't sacrifice. As if working 12-hour days in freezing weather was a privilege. As if missing birthdays, being alone, breaking myself down piece by piece meant nothing. "You're abroad, Chuka," she snapped. "You can't be talking like someone who doesn't have options." I laughed, loud, bitter. That was when I knew she didn't see me anymore. Maybe she never really did. I took a long breath. "Ngozi, I'm done. For now, maybe forever. I need to live. I need to breathe. I can't die for everybody else anymore." She hung up, no goodbye, no pause, just a blank screen. Then came the messages from her, from Mama, from her cousins, one by one. "So this is the real you. We see now. Don't ever say you love your family. You've let us down." No one asked why. No one asked how I was. No one asked what it took for me to finally say no. That night I lay on the floor. No blanket, no lights, no sound. But for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Lonely, yes, scared, absolutely. But there was no more pretending. And in the silence, I whispered, "God, if you're still there, please just let me find myself again." It's been 8 months since that night. No one has called, not Ngozi, not Mama, not even the children. I used to stare at my phone every morning waiting for a message, any message. A sign that someone remembered I existed outside what I could give, but the silence remained. At first it felt like death, like I'd buried a part of myself no one would mourn. I questioned everything. Was I cruel? Ungrateful? Was this how men lost their families? But with each quiet morning something else began to grow, a thin root, steady and quiet, clarity. I started going to the park near my flat, just walking, no destination, no pressure. Just movement. I picked up a second-hand keyboard from a thrift store for 15 pounds. I hadn't played since secondary school, but my fingers remembered. Slowly, painfully, but they remembered. I even found a small support group, mostly other African men. One from Kenya, one Ghanaian, two from Niger. We met on Thursdays, talked about things men aren't supposed to say out loud. Loneliness, anger, shame. I found out I wasn't alone. That there are hundreds of us, thousands even, who left home thinking we could carry everyone on our backs, only to realize the weight was never meant for one person. One of them, Tony, said something that stayed with me. "You can love your people and still save yourself." It took me months to understand that. I used to believe that love looked like sacrifice, endless, unquestioning, brutal sacrifice. That if you weren't suffering for them, then maybe you didn't care enough. But now I know better. Love, real love, doesn't demand that you disappear. Real love sees you, hears you, wants you alive. Sometimes I still miss my children so deeply it hurts. I replay old voice notes, whisper, "I love you" into the dark, and pray that one day they'll come find me, not the provider, not the ATM, not the fixer, but me. Chuka, their father, their flawed, tired, healing father. And if that day never comes, then may God give me the strength to still be whole. I haven't sent money home since. Not because I don't care, but because I finally care enough to draw a line. A man must have boundaries, a man must be allowed to be human. Now when I walk past the shop window I see someone else looking back. Not strong, not rich, not even okay all the time, but real, present, still standing, still here.